for the drainage of an internal, or rather, there's very little to observe in relation to the drainage of a building from the inside. The reason is most of the drainage is on the outside of the building. There are some connections from the wash hand basin, sink, washing machine, dishwashers, closet, water closet, shower. But the connections are hidden, so you can't always see these. And usually the drainage, except the house is renovated, usually the drainage is usually fine. The waste is removed easily. There is no rainwater within a flat or a house, with the exception of where it's collecting water from an external aspect to the building, like a balcony or a roof. Usually the rainwater pipes run on the outside of the building as opposed to the inside. Newer buildings will have rainwater pipes running on the inside for specific reasons, but usually they are usually hidden, so you will not see them. So there's very little to look out for with regards to the public health drainage. So let's move rather quickly. We'll come back to our list. We've talked about services. Let's talk about furnishing. Furnishing. And in many ways, I have covered some aspects of furnishing, but I'd like to perhaps draw your attention to one or two areas that might be worth considering. Number one, quality of fittings, fixtures, and equipment. Just make an observation. What is the quality of the fitting? Bathroom fitting, kitchen fitting. What is the quality of the fixtures? Are there any joinery? Are there any fireplaces? Are the fireplaces functional? You can ask the question, is it functional? Do the fireplaces, do they work? Have they worked? Is it gas? Is it electricity? Is it dual? You also want to look at the quality of the equipment. What's been left? White goods. So just make an observation about the quality of the fittings. Very important. Number two, when you view a property, you always want to ask the sales agent to clarify what is included and what is excluded in the purchase. So most of the time when you view a property, you must recognize that it's no different from going into a showroom. The fittings and the furnishing may not come with the property, except it explicitly states that in the sales brochure. There are times when you might walk into a property and it has beautiful furnishings or furnishing, and you could ask whether the seller would be willing to sell the property with the furnishing included, or with the furnitures included. So always ask, what's included, what stays, what's going. And here's the reason. You might walk into a place and it's beautifully decorated. And we'll go back to the 90-10% reference I used, exterior, interior. But there are properties where you might go into and you find out that, yes, maybe the 90% is on the inside and 10% is just the base. However, the owners have furnished this and they've spent an extra 15% on interior design. Beautiful chandeliers, beautiful wallpapers, beautiful paintings. And you can always negotiate. When people are selling, remember they've designed a space to their taste. And sometimes when they move or when they decide to go elsewhere, sometimes the furnitures that they once loved may not be suitable for the new home that they might be moving into. Some people occasionally might be, relocating, changing maybe their residence. Some people might be traveling abroad. So they do not need furniture, and they might have to store some of those furnitures. And if you can negotiate that some of that furniture is included in the price, you might get a really good bargain. Now, I believe it's important that you recognize that you do have, I would say, a strong negotiation advantage, and therefore you should exercise it. So always ask the question, what's included and what stays? And don't be scared to ask for more. Never feel scared. You walk into the kitchen and it has beautiful white goods, a beautiful fridge freezer, some nice chairs, some nice table, a barbecue set. You can always say, well, I like you to leave this when you depart. I'll make you an offer, but I also like for the following items to be included in the purchase price. So we talked about what's included and what stays. Number 3, I would ask you to visually observe how the space relates to one another. And this is quite important. Perhaps, let me not deal with this right now. Let me move very quickly to what I call space functionality, which would be number 4. Space function. So we've talked about furnishing. Let's move to space functionality. What does that mean? Let me give you an example. This time around, I'm going to assume you come into the house. As you come into the house, there's stairs that takes you upstairs. This goes upstairs. The first door is a living room. The back is a kitchen. So you have something like this. I'd like you to recognize what I've just drawn. The rooms are upstairs, so you come upstairs. And as you come up here, the bathroom is there. And you have bedroom 1, bedroom 2. From a position of space functionality, this is a terrible layout. Why? Always avoid rectangular spaces. You want spaces that are more square in nature, or more proportional, 4 meters by 4 meters, or 4 meters by 5 meters, or 4 meters by 6 meters. What you like to avoid is 2.5 meters by 4 meters. The reason is because from a layout perspective, imagine if that was a bedroom, you put your bed in that corner, if that's the door that leads into the bedroom, where do you put your wardrobe? Where do you put your chest of drawers? There's no space. Where do you put your TV if you like TVs in your bedroom? Whereas if this was a space such as this could be the entrance into the room. You can have your bed over there. You can have your wardrobe over there. You can have bedside tables on either side. And then on this, you can have a table for the television set. And underneath, you can have a chest of drawers. So it's all about functionality of space. So number 1 in terms of space functionality is layout. How is it laid out? Is it beautifully laid out? There are times when you might find a property. Now, let me make reference to the fact that if you're buying a house, if it's a period building, usually Victorian buildings, Edwardian buildings, and Georgian buildings were originally tastefully designed. And therefore, when you're buying the entire house, it's very unlikely that you might be disappointed with the layout. Occasionally, you might. We all have different tastes. But in that era, Design was something that they held very passionately. Unfortunately, in London particularly, a lot of buildings have been converted from single use or single dwellings to flats. So what you tend to find is that a building may have been converted from a house, and now the building is a flat. Ground floor, first floor, second floor. And what this means is that they've used spaces that were originally designed for specific uses for other uses. So you might see a flat where you come into the flat, and as soon as you come into the flat, the first thing you see is the toilet. That's not really nice. Or you come into a flat, and let me use another example. Imagine that to be, you come into the flat, and the first thing you come into is the living room, right? And then the toilet is just by the living room. So you go to the toilet, and from the toilet you come right into the living room, and then the bedroom is to the side. Not good. Spaces need to be separate. If you're buying a flat, ideally what you would like is to come into the flat and you come into a hallway. Imagine this to be the hallway. And then the toilet is to one side. And let's assume the bedroom is to one side. And then maybe, if it's a one-bedroom flat, you come into the living room and then the kitchen, open plan kitchen. It's a better use of the space. So when you come out from the toilet or the bathroom, the people who you're hosting in the living room cannot see you. And if you have guests, friends in the living room, you can go use the toilet or the bathroom, go into your bedroom, get changed, and come into the living room and interact. So layout is very important. And number two is something that I discussed before, which is the size of each space and the distribution. Size and distribution of each space. Size matters when it comes to properties, especially when it comes to habitable spaces. Size matters. So size and distribution. By size, I mean area and height, which is the fourth item I'm going to talk about. But size is important. You want to look at the distribution of the space and the size. Then you want to look at the area. Rooms, I don't consider rooms or bedrooms that are 10 square meters or less to be rooms. As a matter of fact, the minimum I would go for is 4 meters by 4 meters. I might settle 4 meters by 3 meters or 4.2 meters by 3.5 meters. So size matters. Rooms that are 3 meters by 2 meters, I don't consider those as rooms. You might be unfortunate and you might get a room that is 3 meters by 3.5. That's fine because it's symmetrical. You can fit. The whole idea is this, that in a room you should be able to fit a bed. You must be able to fit 2 bedside tables. You must be able to fit, imagine that to be say the door leading into the room. You must be able to fit a wardrobe, allowing space for you to go through to each side of the room, and then you have space for a chest of drawers. You're investing a lot of money. Don't buy boxes. You're better off holding out and waiting. And in relation to distribution of each space, size and distribution, let me explain what I meant by that. If you're buying a property where the living room is 5 meters by 5 meters, the bedroom is 2 meters by 4 meters, and then the toilet is, say, 2 meters by 1 meter, and then this is the entrance into the flat. So you come into the flat and you have the toilet, you have the bedroom, you have the living room. I consider this to be a poor distribution, very poor distribution. What this means is that the property, perhaps initially this entire space was a living room, and because it's been a converted building, they've simply put a partition board, a stud board, put some stud work, an internal partition, plasterboard, and they've separated these two spaces. They've called one a bedroom, they put another one there, they call this a toilet and a bathroom, and they're trying to sell you this as a 1-bedroom flat. And this is nonsense. This is not well distributed. The sizes are not proportional. So I would discount flats or apartments like that. 5x5 living room, 3.5, ideally 4x4 bedroom, bathroom, say 2x2, and then a hallway, and then a storage area, so you can put, your washing machine and all the other items that you do not want in any of the spaces. So it's important to understand how each space is distributed. Now, let's talk about area and height. I've addressed some of that already. Height is important. All spaces are not created equal. Sometimes a sales agent will sell you a property where they've indicated that the floor area is 5 meters by 5 meters. However, when you walk into the space, suddenly you realize that there are sections of the space that have reduced head heights. I will always discount any part of the room that has a height of less than 1.5 meters. If it's 1.5 meters or below, I remove that from the floor area. What that means is if I was trying to measure this room, I would discount that section of the room. Why? Because it's not really functional. The price you pay for the main room is not equal to the price you pay for the reduced zone. The reason is because you cannot stand. You can't even stand in this section of the room. So all you can do is put a TV set in that corner. That's fine if you choose to, but it's important to recognize that you're paying premium price for a space that is not premium space. It's important to bear that in mind. All spaces are not created equal. Always verify the height. Wherever there are reduced heights, if it's below 1.5 meters, I'd like you to discount that from the total space. So if they say the space is 5, imagine that to be the floor plan, but that's reduced height. I would usually focus on just that section of the room. This might be 3 meters by 3 meters. I usually discount that section. And then finally, number 5 is something that we've covered previously, which is the floor area measurements. I won't discuss this much. I'll just leave it at that. I'll talk about one final item, which is number 6. Number 6 is window position. This is very, very, very crucial in terms of window positions. Very crucial. You walk into a space. Imagine this to be the bedroom, but let's imagine that the room is positioned in such a way that the door, has to do with functionality of space. You come into the room, and therefore, because the room was not designed like this originally, it's been converted or renovated, the space is empty. Imagine this to be an empty space. And you come and you view the room, and it's 4 meters by 3 meters, and you think, great, we'll take it. Unfortunately, you also have to pay attention to the positions of the windows. Now, because of the layout of the space, when you come through, you might find that maybe due to the size of the space, maybe this might be 2 meters, and this might be 3.5 meters. You find that with the windows positioned there. What that means is that you have to put your bed by the window, which is always wrong. Or you might find you have to put the bed that way, by the window, again, which is not great. The ideal position for windows is if you have a bedroom. Ideally, you want to be able to, wake up in the morning looking out the window, look at the heavens. Or you want to be positioned somewhere like that, but with enough space so you can still be able to enjoy the views. It makes no sense for you to buy a flat or house where the bed is by the window and therefore you're always looking that way. It might be good, if you're trying to read a book, but it's not always the right thing to do. Always be mindful of, buying a property where the window positions are disadvantageous. Also, I would like you to consider this. You're buying a house. It's a detached house, but there's another property next door. On this floor, the window of the room looks out to the wall of another building. That means you don't have a view. There's no view. That would mean that you discount. So if this was another building, and let's assume there's only 2 meters between both buildings, it means every time you look out the window, all you see is brickwork. I'll discount this. I won't buy it. Or even if it's a living room. So you always want to look. Sometimes you might look at the floor plan and the floor plan looks good. When you get to the property, always stand. When you arrive, always stand and look out the window and ask yourself the question. Number one, what is the position of the window in relation to the floor? This distance is what we call the sill height. If you're buying a building and it's a good building, if it was an originally designed building, you'll find that most Victorian buildings, most Georgian buildings, most Edwardian buildings will have a sill of between 500 to 600. Sometimes you might find, if it's a full height, it might be 300. But rarely do you find originally designed spaces with sills that are 900 or above. So sometimes you might find a property where the window is so far up, such that if you are entertaining guests and you're sitting down, you can't see, you have to look upwards. You can't see outside. Ideally, you want full height windows so you can have a beautiful view, or at least you might want, a height of about 500 above the finished floor level, or 600 above the finished floor level. So it's important you pay attention to the positions of the window and the height of the window above the finished floor level. Very important. Always think about the space from the perspective and from the position of how the space will be used. Don't get excited. Always stand back and look and ask yourself the question, was this space designed to be a bedroom? Was this space designed to be a living room? Was this space designed to be a guest room? Was it designed to be a kitchen area? Because there are so many buildings that have been renovated in London. In London, about 85% of all the properties are existing. Only about 15% are new. New buildings are designed much better from the perspective of, daylight, from the perspective of ventilation. And the reason is because we have British standards for construction and the building regulations that guide what we do with access in terms of daylight, travel, ventilation, and all these other things that enhance the well-being of people. Health and well-being is something that is considered very carefully in building design. Presently, many years ago in Victorian times, maybe it wasn't considered to that level of detail. However, the original buildings designed in the Victorian, Edwardian, Victorian or Georgian times were done very beautifully. So always ask yourself that question. How does it work? Now, I'm going to draw this to a close. And I'm going to just give you some bullet points, things to look out for when you're in the house. Number one, always look out for moisture or the evidence of damp, signs of leaks, cracks. Look at the chimney breasts, see where there's damp. Look for cracks on the ceiling, on the wall, leaks on the wall. Number two, check and see if there is a loft space. If there is a loft space, you would like to look and see what the size is. Number two, potentially what is in the loft. Can it be used for storage, or is there a water tank in the loft? Number three, something that I've mentioned previously, floor to ceiling heights in every single area. Are the areas reduced? What areas need to be discounted? We talked about fittings. The kitchen area, the wardrobes, are there any built-in fittings? Is there any joinery? How does it work? Has it been done well? I'd like you to check the water pressure. I have to apologize, I'm raising this now. The water pressure in a building is important. If you're buying a flat on the top floor, it's important to check what the pressure of the water would be like. One of the ways I do this is I go into the property, I go to the highest floor, I turn on the shower, and then I go to the bathroom or the toilet and I flush the toilet. And then I walk back to the shower and I see whether there's been a drop in the water pressure. Some other times I would always, flush the toilet, put on the shower, put on the wash hand basin so I can see if there's enough water and if the pressure is sufficient. And the purpose for that is when you buy a property, the last thing you want is not to be able, to have a shower because someone else is, using the kitchen. You notice when I've explained how to check the water pressure, I did not refer to the kitchen. The reason is because for converted buildings and for normal buildings, the kitchen is normally supplied directly from the water mains. And the water, in terms of Thames Water, they can only guarantee 1 bar of pressure. Finally, always carry out, if you can, your viewings during the day. Why? Because you want to understand how well natural light falls into the flat. Agents are very, very, very good at their jobs when they have to be. Because there have been so many converted buildings in London, or because there have been so many buildings developed adjacent to other buildings in London, what you tend to find is that there is not a lot of good natural daylight. So when you view a property, usually you might notice that all the lights in the property have been switched on. You might be deceived into thinking, this is great. Everything looks new and shiny. The first thing I do when I walk into a place is to turn off all the light so I can see how well the building functions naturally. A building that does not have a lot of natural light will cause severe health consequences. And light makes a huge difference. So do not be deceived into thinking, the space is beautiful, it has a lot of artificial lights, and so it will be fine. It will not be fine. Natural lights are not the same as artificial lights. You need natural light. You need big windows. You need a lot of natural light. It affects your mood. It affects your health. It affects your well-being. It affects your ability to be inspired from a position of entertaining friends. Natural light makes a difference. Now, when you buy a property, you must always think about the exit process. And that simply means at some point, you might want to sell. If the property you're buying does not have a lot of natural light, whoever might be potentially buying your property sometime in the future will have reservations. So light is important. Let me conclude with noise. When you buy a property, you're imagining and you're hoping that there will be no noise concerns. I mentioned that some buildings have single glazed windows. Single glazed windows are prone to have a lot of noise issues. So one of the things I will do normally is when I view a property from perspective of noise, I always go with a speaker, a portable speaker. If the building is a flat, what I do is I put the speaker in the hallway and I put it on. And I go into the room or go into the flat and I just observe. I turn the volume up And the reason I do this is I like to see how loud it sounds. The reason is simple. If you're buying a flat and there is someone underneath or someone above you, at some point there will be parties, there will be celebrations, there will be just entertainment, local entertainment. Now what you're trying to do is understand how much noise can travel from one part of the house to another. If it's a converted flat, usually the level of noise and acoustic design is quite poor because it was designed as one house. It was not designed originally to accommodate many families, and therefore it's important for you to be extremely, I would say, attentive to noise. What I would normally do when I view a place is I come with a portable speaker, I put the speaker on, I move between rooms, I turn it to the loudest volume, just so I can observe how bad or how audible the music could be. The last thing you want is to buy a flat, an expensive flat, and you have people underneath or people above you, and who knows, there might be students, there might be workers, but you might have different working hours. So they have entertainment and friends at 2 a.m. and you're trying to sleep because you have surgery, you're conducting a surgery, or you have a client at 7:30 in the morning. So noise is important. Something I do as well is, this applies primarily to flats, because if you're buying the entire house, the risk of noise is reduced, with the exception of when you buy, say, a terraced house where one building is adjacent to another building, is adjacent to another building. What I tend to do in this case is I always check and see the floor plan. Let's say I'm trying to buy this property. I'll always try to find the floor plan of A and the floor plan of C. And the reason is simply because I like to see the positions of the rooms in relation to the property I'm interested in. Likewise that. Why? Because it makes a difference. If it's a flat, I always look for the floor plan of the flat underneath and the flat above, so I can see where the bedrooms of the flat are positioned and where the living rooms are positioned, so I can know where potentially there could be noise. This is very critical, very important. Again, I mentioned that most buildings in London have been converted. So sometimes you might find in a property, the bedroom on the lower floor might be in that location, but above the bedroom on the upper floor, that's the living room. So it means you always have noise from the living room above coming into yours.